Howdy, all you delicious people. I am here today to review Species 2. So, surprisingly, the original Species movie had done so well that I'm like, well, okay, hopefully people will like a franchise out of that because that's probably where this is heading. So, Species 2, honestly, is within sequel thickness. And what I mean by that is so much about this movie is to do all of the sequel tropes, whereas we have the gang that has to get back together from the original movie to fight the monster one last time. We even go on and have the Colonel character that goes on and says, yeah, everything that you did in the original film, just do it again here. Because you beat that monster before, let's just do the same thing here. And honestly, with this sequel film, there is a lot of, I feel, more filler things going on because I guess there wasn't much to really write for this movie, as well as also going through the obvious ways to get the skin in this film, which is to really just have them go into strip clubs or go into just like let's have this guy just pay for it and have some stuff just kind of come out of that. But then also, they do end up expanding upon the aliens more to really showcase them action wise and getting pelted with bullets and ripping doors off of handles and all kinds of cool interesting things. If we did go on and see at some point them tear through steel doors in the first film, but still we're seeing a lot more showcase of these characters of aliens and seeing how really interesting they can go on and be. Within this film, they play around with a little bit more of the blood of this alien race, to where immediately a lot of this movie comes off as John Carpenter's The Thing, and tries to give you the jump scares similar to John Carpenter's The Thing. But again, these movies aren't to go on and be equal to one another because, of course, John Carpenter's The Thing is a massive film, and this movie is to just try and steal a little bit of its coattails. But so, Species 2, of course, ups the ante in the fact of, well, hey, we had a female alien before, now we have to have a male alien. And now, within the sequel, the two female and male alien have to meet, and there has to be a big onslaught of battle because of it. And let's see who's going to come out of here alive in the sequel, which is to really just be the same people who have gone on and bouted them before, as well as also incorporating a new character into the mix, which really he's just there for these scrappy one-liners and is to ultimately not be as good as Forrest Whitaker's character. He's just kind of there. And then also, we have to have the this actress was so good in the first film, but she died. So yeah, we need to figure out a way to just kind of bring her back in the story, because obviously she was the profound thing of the first film. So we have to kind of creatively write her back in, and so they end up cloning her and making her Eve in this movie, the female alien. So there was to go on and be no Forrest Whitaker character in this movie, but instead they decide to just have Eve have this psychic connection with Patrick, to where I'm like, oh, okay, so this is kind of like the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie Replicant, where Jean-Claude's clone can go on and have a mental link and be able to see what this killer is doing. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we're going that route in this movie. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And yet, logically, that is to be the easy avenue of doing this film, to really just still have them try and figure out where Patrick is throughout this film. So for Species 2, like, yeah, there's a lot of filler, like that whole Cromwell thing going on where they have to go to find this scientist and find out why they shouldn't have gone on Mars, and to also go on and just have like Patrick need to go on and thrust his way through all these women, and at some points giving us like some good visuals, and then sometimes it's just kind of like these throwaway things. And also going on and saying here that this movie feels so much so like Ghostbusters 2, because Ghostbusters 2 is to be the most like sequel of sequel films, as well as also within this sequel, like they are really much more incorporating like like blood and slime elements, and they're going on also and having like newer weapons from the first movie. Instead of the flamethrowers, they're doing the more like spray weapons, which is, I guess, to be considered a lot more safe, but also to just be like, well, we needed different weapons in this movie because it's sequel. We just got to do something different here. And also, like, eventually the ultimate weapon is to be a sick person's blood, like World War Z. So, with that said, like, regardless of all the positives and negatives about this movie, I did find it entertaining. I really did enjoy it. And also, like, there's a lot of bit about this film that, like, is to not be as so weak in the CGIs and stuff like that. So, like, I feel that this movie better holds up than its original movie. And then also, I think that this movie goes on and does the best effort of sequel, even though maybe it can go on and be possibly weaker than its original film as far as just story is concerned. Because really, we just have the goal of like, well, yeah, everything that you did in the first film, like, just do the exact same thing, but just kind of make it more, make it bigger, make it to where even Patrick as an alien is this big lavish thing that looks nothing similar to its female counterpart, and it just looks really weird. But then also they try as much as possible to make it just kind of interesting and kind of fun to watch. So with that said, uh, I want to go on and say that this movie was, I think, an okay or solid okay film. It's entertaining. Definitely go out of your way to say that you could see this for absolutely free, because I'm sure it's probably available on some goofy app somewhere where you probably have to rent it or buy it or whatever. I'm going to go on and let you know that you can go into a Google Play Store and be able to download an app called Zellophonic or Moopzy. Zellophonic, Zelibonic. Moopzy, Moopzzi. And justify yourself continuing on this franchise with Species, because it really is still an entertaining film. And in all honesty, it's kind of weird for me because I am to probably to have remembered Species 2 much more so than the original Species film, just because the story and stuff that goes into the first one like is easily forgettable. Whereas in this movie, like the most like iconic thing is like Patrick just taking off his own head. And also like how this character is to go on and like blatantly say that he has to have these like kind of blank spots. And so that kind of makes up for the fact that this character is to be half alien and half human. But anyways, so also a lot of people are immediately saying that like Patrick is the villain of this movie, and I honestly think that that is completely wrong in my opinion. I honestly think that the villain in this story is actually Senator Ross, Patrick's father. Because honestly, that guy is an a-hole. But then also, I feel that Senator Ross was to be a person to try and stop Patrick from wanting to get help or wanting to get cured of his alien nature. And by going on and just telling Patrick to book up, like you're a Ross, act like one, and all this just kind of like more manly speak. It's like, oh yeah, you think you being an astronaut on Mars is hard? Like, well, try and be a senator. And so yeah, so like Senator Ross goes on and tells Patrick to not go on and not get help. And then even when the colonel is to make his way to Senator Ross's place and tell him, it's like, yeah, your son is an alien and we need to find him. Senator Ross is to not go on and be like, oh yeah, anything you need, because like I was such an a-hole to my son anyways, that like logically within this story, like the senator should be so easy to help. No, like the senator is just like, no, my son is going to become a president. No one's going to stop that. Not even if it means that the world is going to end, because my son is going to F it to death. Because legitimately, that's what they go on and they say in the sequel, that the alien is going to F the planet to death. And I thought that that was a really cool line in this movie because it makes sense. It logically, I'm like, man, why didn't they talk about that in the first film? Because I thought that that line was kind of rather cool. So, with that said, uh, eventually, like Senator Ross is to try and do what's best for Patrick. And there is a cost there. But so, anyways, with that said, I think it's about that time to just roll into spoilers. Let me know in the comments below what is to be your favorite Species film. Because if you were to go on and say that the first one is better than all the other ones, like I probably would not argue with you on that. But I feel that like these first two, at least, from seeing them both fairly recently, I think both of them have good points about them. Like I don't think that um, one or the other is just so uh, like out there or left field or whatever that like just hurts these two collectively together. And you could just watch them and enjoy them. I think eventually when we have other sequels, I'm sure they like kind of go into a lesser budget, or they of course don't bring back as many people, and they go into uh, the of course like, well, hey, we're trying to save money, but we just need to keep doing these movies because people still see value in them. But anyways, let's go on into spoilers. Let's break this whole movie down because I think it's about that time to sound off about this whole breakdown of film. So, with that said, I'm going to, of course, go on and pause this video here and get out my notes and uh, go on and just break down this whole film. So, with that said, it is spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. So, also let me know in the comments below what is to be your favorite sequel film. Maybe you're a Die-Hard fan, or maybe you are to like whatever franchise movies and stuff like that. Maybe you like Rush Hour 2 or something. That sequel of Rush Hour is actually pretty good. But let's go and pause here and let's whip this out. Okay. Also, like with the way like the battle ends up just kind of playing out by the end of the film and seeing the male alien and he's just kind of bigger and more massive, like that was to go on and kind of excuse me, that was to go on and remind me of the first like Men in Black film where we have like the big cockroach versus Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith's character. And also I like the fact that like we weren't just thinking that it was just going to be Patrick who was to be an alien in this movie, as well as also Eve is to be here as well. So, with that said, so in the very beginning of this movie, we of course have this space shuttle that is to be attached to this docking bay that has this lander to make its way on to Mars. So we obviously here have them pan out of uh, this docking bay to find all the sponsors are right there. The Reeboks, the Bud Light, the Sprint, the Pepsi, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's like a very creative way to get your sponsors out. But then again, also, it just seems like, oh, okay, like we couldn't have gone on and figure out ways to have all these sponsors somehow within the film or write them into the film. Instead, we just have to slap them all here and hope that the sponsors are going to be happy that we did that. So they end up going on and deploying this lander to then have Patrick land on the moon. And so he ends up initiating a lot of the Mars rovers to make their way out so they can go on and get some soil samples or dirt samples of Mars. And if you have never gone on and known much about the Mars rover, there is to also be a whole episode of it on Big Bang Theory where one of the guys goes on and is to accidentally do something with the Mars rover where he is to try and figure out a way to like have it be wiped from the system, because I think he ends up like breaking it or he ends up doing something horribly wrong with it. And they build a whole episode on it. It's really interesting. But I'm trying to think of the guy that ends up getting involved in that. But anyways, so because it's been such a long time since I've seen anything Big Bang Theory related. So we have the news that is going on and covering this whole like First Man on Mars event. And while that is going on, we also have this scientist Cromwell who has lost his mind, and he is to go on and be shouting out, "I told them not to go! I told them not to go!" as they grab him and they restrain him. And come to find out, Cromwell will be right. So Patrick ends up going on to get all these dirt samples and put them in these containers. And Patrick is going on of like, man, I did like everything to get to Mars, and now all I am is just this ditch digger, as well as also him not really digging the ditch, as really just the Mars rover is doing that for him. And also, it seems that the drill bits are just having some issues, just kind of making their way to get through Mars's surface. But it was also really interesting that eventually Cromwell, when they get to him in this film, like they mentioned how like Mars, it's at one point like did have a lot more things to it, but then because of the aliens, it ended up turning into a rock-like husk of a planet. So I was like, all right, like that's kind of interesting how like we can speculate how Mars was to go on to be at some point. And then also there's to be a lot of Mars like science fiction films where they are to go on and try and revive Mars to make it have breathable air and have plant life and stuff like that. Like I think there was a Val Kilmer movie that goes on and does that, as well as also I'm sure there are a plethora of different kind of other movies that kind of get into that same kind of vein. If to not only have, I'm sure it had the word slapped on it Mars for whatever reason. So, but again, like it seems that like if you always have an alien movie, it probably is to have to do with Mars anyways, cliche as it is. So Patrick takes the lander, makes it back onto the docking bay, and Patrick ends up telling Dennis and Anna here that he's like, man, that was incredible. He also, Patrick had to go on and do this whole, like, kind of speech when he lands on the moon because you can't just go on and just land on the moon. Like, there has to be some profound, goofy thing that he has to go on and say. He has to plant the flag and kind of like how, like, it's one step for man and a giant leap for mankind. Like, that whole thing like had to go on and be a speech via the astronaut because it seems that they forcibly have to like do some theatrical things within also accomplishing these goals. So the astronauts go on and speak with the president because of course they do, because the president has to go on and uh like just blow them. Yeah, you did this thing. Like, yeah, it's great that you just like accomplished this task because not everybody could go on and do this, and Americans can finally climb to the heavens. Yeah, whatever you want to go on and just say here. So Patrick is to go on and thank the president, like, well, hey, if it wasn't for my crew that basically did nothing but be on the ship while I went on and actually did the heavy lifting. But no. So the three astronauts have to go on and make their way back onto planet Earth and descend to the planet. So we find that the cryogenic samples are seeming to thaw out as they are to descend into making their way back to Earth. And so one of the containers ends up opening, and so there is a countdown becoming a thing for them to start them shooting off. There's a lot of technical jargon that also is to be put forth in the beginning of this movie that I could not be bothered to go on and repeat or state or whatever, besides some of the lines that I've already done. So here's where we go on and get the first slime in the film. where the goop from the sample just makes its way out and starts to slither, because we didn't get enough slithering in the first film with the whole slither nips. We go on and have some slime that is slithering out of this container, making its way to try to attach itself onto the astronauts. And so all of a sudden, all three of the astronauts are to just have this gap of time where they're just like, and so that is to lead Houston to just be like, well, don't tell me the ship blew up. Like, let's go on and figure out like what happened. So we have Patrick that is to just kind of wake up out of his like just brain fog, and he is to mention it's like, oh, I'm sorry, Houston, like we had a malfunction here, and so we're gonna adjust here, and we're gonna just make our descent like we were meant to. So we then transition here because I'm sure all of this astronaut space stuff is so fast paced and not boring, right? So here is where we go on and have to show as best as we can some skin in this film. So Eve, who is to have been the clone of Syl, I think in the very first review I completely said this character's name wrong. So I'm sure a lot of people did not correct me because there wasn't any comments in that video. So I'm just really distraught by the fact that no one was to correct me because I could have used the comments on that video, but it seems to just be doing surprisingly well regardless. But again, I really would have gone on and needed those comments. But regardless, because I would have ignored them and just like, oh, well, like, happens when you have to go on and remember like 10 different names within a movie. So Laura Baker is going on from the first film and putting this experiment together to test this spray that goes into Eve's room to try to figure out a way to weaponize this against an alien, because they're assuming that this is going to happen more in the future. They go on and they end up explaining that this is the extraterrestrial vulnerability experiment. And so we have Eve that goes on and gets this spray being placed within this room. And she screams, she cries, she calls out for Laura. Oh, Laura! So they go on and they pull Eve out, and they find that she is going on and having all of these welts. And so this colonel officer that we see through a good chunk of this movie, because he ends up getting the old team back together, and he at some point is like the Finch of this movie compared to the first film, where he's going on and being the leader, but he doesn't really do much of anything. He's just a guy that is telling these people at some points what to do because he's the money man. And he's funding this whole operation. So we have Colonel with these three other military high upper stooges, and the Colonel is to be like kind of just happy with the fact that they are to produce these welts upon this girl's body, but then fortunately Eve is to heal up those wounds, and they're to go on and realize that it's like, well, like the alien goes on and adapts after it is to go on and be weakened. So we end up the colonel saying like, well, man, like so you're telling me that like this girl, like no matter what we throw at her, like she is just gonna like just out queen it or whatever. whatever he ends up like goofily saying, it's very weird. So Laura's to go on and get Eve and just kind of schlock her back to her fortress of solitude, or in this case, a like a glass cage. So Eve ends up asking Laura, it's like, well, hey, like, why do you go on? You do this to me. And it's like, well, we have to just to make sure that we can take you guys out. No, that's what I wish you would have said. But so Eve is to go on and just be like, well, like, you know what? Like, I go on and I watch this television and I'll see places that I'll never go. Uh, I'll meet people, or I'll see people that I'll never meet, and like really all that I am is just uh this laboratory rat, this animal. And like really, like Eve here is pushing to Laura, it's like, well, hey, like I'm a human too. Like I'm half human. I'm not fully alien, because they had to go on and figure out a way to suppress Eve's alien side, because fortunately if they didn't and Eve was full alien, she would break out of this cage and go on and need to mate and this and that. And also, the colonel and the military guys had to go on and not be seen by Eve during this test, because fortunately, if they were there watching on and Eve could look at them, that is to enlighten the danger, as every single uh, worker that is in this facility is female. So it's like, all right, that is actually really clever and really smart. I like that. So I just wanted to explain that, because of course I completely had forgotten it, and so I thought I would go on and talk about it here. So the space shuttle lands. The three astronauts make their way into getting poked and prodded by all these sciencey guys. So come to find out, now the astronauts have landed, but they can't have sex for 10 days. Oh no. Even though there seems to be a litany of women that are with outside this quarantine spot that these three astronauts are in, and they're going, oh my god, oh, like as if this is like Total Request Live. You guys remember that MTV show? Where they are to go on and make those countdowns and bring in all the boy bands, and women are screaming, ah! Yes, I am to be that old that I know what TRL is. I don't know if TRL still exists, because I don't have basic cable anymore. But I'm sure it probably does somewhere. It probably has a library that they probably toss in some streaming service somewhere. So don't have the sexual for 10 days, folks. Just with Stain, come on. So, uh, we have Patrick and Senator Ross and all the other astronautos making their way to this fundraiser, where Senator Ross is going on and doing this speech about how he is to have gone on and been with President Kennedy, and really just saying that, like, well, like, this moment is supposed to be about my son, but F him, like, I'm gonna, like, say how I am to be this great guy because I had spent some time with President Kennedy and no one else did in this room. So, and then also, like, tout about how he is to, like, well, yeah, and then also I became a senator. It's like, yeah, we know who you are, buddy. But like in all honesty, like how they go on and how they state this stuff, like it's like, oh, okay, so we know who this guy is and know bits about him and how that's eventually going to be prevalent at some point in this film. So, but then Senator Ross does then finally relent and is to start talking about his son and praising his son, but his son is not even there as they cue Dennis and Anna and their lovers, and also Patrick is to have his own lover that he is to kind of bring on his shoulder with him. So Dennis and Anna are looking and they're like, well, like, where is Patrick? Shouldn't he go on and hear um, his father like sucking him off right now? Because he's never going to get this opportunity ever again. So, come to find out, Patrick is going off with a debutante and is getting some intimate moments between the two of them, making out. To where when Senator Patrick is to announce, or Senator Ross is to announce Patrick's name, there is to be kind of crickets going on to where the senator is like, hey, find my son. So Patrick is going on and telling this debutante, well, honey, like it seems that they're calling my name. And so this debutante goes on and tells Patrick, it's like, Lincoln Suite upstairs, hurry. So we have Patrick that makes his way up the stage, and Senator Ross has to go on and kind of give him crap. It's like, nice to see that you showed up. Nice to see that I was like in your bubble window of time. So Patrick is to go on and start this speech. And so he ends up going on, and like the big focus here is how he was to go and look at the earth and in his mind, like, think of how fragile and how like there's a possibility that because of how fragile this earth is, like it can go on and be so easily destroyed, and all that God has created is to go on with it. So Patrick is to go on and say that there is no longer like a reasoning for a mission on Mars. If anything, the real mission is here at home. And Patrick, after that, it seems, is to get the applause of everybody, and so he is to finish up his speech to run his way to the Lincoln Suite to end up with this debutante that ends up seemingly wanting to share Patrick with her sister. So we're like, all right, like we're up in the ante and the bang to bang to bang. God, I am such a child. Uh, but there, like, I have to go on and just kind of figure out ways to innuendo everything and whatever goofily figure out ways to write my way through this movie. So Eve is going on and watching a baseball game where she has this baseball within her fist, and these two science ladies are going on and they're watching Eve just play a bit of sit down and watch. So the two scientists are going on and saying like, well, yeah, like it seems that her heart rate is normal, and so it's like, well, of course her heart rate is normal. She's watching baseball. So Patrick then gets into the throes, and he ends up going on to finish off the one girl to then have the other say, it's like, well, it's my turn now. So Eve is starting to sweat. She's starting to grasp that baseball a little bit tighter. And as the first woman who has, I would hope, finished, is to make her way to the bathroom as she is to go on and struggle and have her stomach grow 2 times this day. And ultimately create her own C-section via the forcing of this alien from out of her body. And while that's going on, we have Patrick, who is getting on top of debutante number 2, and is to go on and have this kind of face on him. And all of a sudden, we start seeing these tethering of all of these alien slivers. And as this woman is to look upon Patrick, she is starting to, of course, freak out and be like, get off me, as he is just continuing to go on. And I'm like, man, this visual is so, like, wild. And also, like, this scene right here is probably the most interesting thing of the whole entire movie. Because here is where this girl, like, there's nothing that she can do. Like, she is just forcibly in the whole throes of things. And Patrick is far too strong for her to try to go on and try to avoid any of this. She is just now just horrified in what is to be going on here. So Eve, of course, is now really, like, going through some real heartbreaking issues, as it seems that the scientists are going on like, well, did somebody hit a home run? What's going on? What's going on here? What's going on? I'm curious. So Patrick is to slither into 2 different women, and is to eventually go on and have them birth children. And Eve is to birth a broken baseball into her hand. So really, at this point, the scientists that are looking on at Eve, they're just like, well, like, oh my God, like, this woman just whatever was happened to her, like, we don't know, but somehow she is to be dealing with some kind of rise of adrenaline for some goofy reason. So Patrick, after going on and schlopping his child to this this mother's cabin that he has just kind of stowed away, and nobody knows about but Patrick and his father, because eventually we'll get to have Senator Ross find Patrick and want to have this, like, heart-to-heart moment and try to convince Patrick, like, oh, okay, buddy, like, I think it's time for, like, you to turn yourself in. Where Patrick, of course, ends up going on and like, well, like, you had your time to have me turn myself in when I came to you earlier in this movie. And here's where that scene is now. So Patrick goes and talks to his father. He's like, you know what, last night after the fundraiser, you know, when I had some blank spots, and Senator Patrick is, or Senator Ross is to go on and be like, well, that's because the drinks were stiff. Like, I tried to get the alcohol flowing so people can open up their wallets and give me their fat checks and their big greasy money. That's not what he said, but that's what he should have gone on and said. So Patrick ends up telling his father, it's like, you know what, I think that there's something wrong with me. Dad, I'm scared. Like, help me out. And so he's like, I'm having some kind of breakdown, Daddy. And so we have Senator Ross that is going on and be like, you know what, buck up, buddy. Like, you are a spoiled child. Like, if anything, like, if you think making your way to Mars is hard, like, try and be a senator. It's like, you know what, you're a Ross, try to behave like one. And and if anything, also keep your wang in your pants. Because I know all about your excursions with all these women that you've been having lately. And if anything, like, I don't want to ruin you getting to the presidency because you had decided to knock up a woman. And all of this was ruined because of a piece of ASS. So Senator Ross goes on and tells Patrick, it's like, well, yeah, for some reason, people love you and they idolize you. So, if anything, you should probably go with me and meet some of my colleagues that want your autograph and just want to just suck you off for a minute here. Just come on, just get some sucking, just get some slurping. Come on, come on, Patrick. You know, just come on. Let's go here. So we have Dr. Ornsky, that is to make a phone call to Dr. Cromwell, but Dr. Cromwell can't make it to the phone right now because he is to go on and be in a loony bin. So Dr. Ornsky is trying to contact Cromwell, and because he is to find that this blood has some alien in it. So Ornsky is to accidentally take the container with the blood and drop it onto the ground, and the blood is starting to travel and move to a corner of this laboratory. To where, if you're having blood move, you probably should not go on and touch that bad boy. But Dr. Ornsky is just like, oh, no, I can just touch this blood and just have it eventually kill me by ripping through my chest through a wall and just die because, man, am I dumb. So, we then go on and have these general high ranking military guys go on and talk to Laura about what had happened to Dr. Ornsky and how he died. So Laura's going on and saying, like, well, like, it seems that this sample of blood that was there that could have quite possibly killed Dr. Ornsky was alien blood, but it's not from Eve because Eve is still rest assured in her contained area. And so now we have to go on and get some suspects together and test them and to see who could possibly be the culprit of this whole wrongdoing. So we of course have this military general guy, I'm assuming, and he's like, well, where do we start looking? So we then transition to a embassy of sorts, where all of a sudden we have Preston who's to make his way out of this embassy, and bizarrely, Preston's name is now Prez in this movie, and I'm not going to go on and call him Prez because that just sounds stupid. That name was just so dumb how they call him Prez now, and I'm like, why did they call him Prez? Was there some weird goofy copyright thing, or did they just think it was cool to just have him have a different name in this film? Like, I guess maybe it was some kind of weird goofy money thing to save upon. I don't know. To have his name different. But then again, I was thinking, like, well, why not just either replace all the actors from the original film and this one, or reasonably, like, just have everybody come back, but they're all in different names. Hence why Syl is now Eve in this film, weirdly enough. So, but Preston is coming out of this embassy and is telling everybody, like, well, the hostages are now all saved. Huzzah, huzzah. So, Preston is going on and finding all these financiers, and he is to state how, like, well, hey, like, this is the kind of work that I will be doing with you in the future if you decide to fund my operation, but then I'm going to hand you over to my assistant, and she'll do all the heavy lifting here. So Preston makes his way to his car to find the colonel standing there, and we of course had this scene kind of similar to like Captain America, where Steve Rogers is kind of having to like, we need you in the fight, so we're gonna have to kind of like figure out ways to entice you to be involved in this. And the colonel is going on and talking to Preston, like, well, yeah, like your country needs you, and this and that, uh and so Preston's like, dude, don't start waving the flag at me. Like I've served my time, and I'm in the private sector now, so like I've got businesses to run, I got things to do. Like I don't want to get involved in that whole alien thing all over again, because like I almost died last time. So Preston is going on and having no real true interest in being involved in this again. But the colonel ends up grabbing Preston's keys and is also to wave $1 million in his face tax free. And so Preston's like, oh, all right. Like, I think I can go on and do this again. Like, I think I can remember what happened in the first movie, and just kind of copy and paste and take this new threat down. So the colonel and Preston just make their way into the laboratory, having then Eve see both of them, and Laura is to then grab the two of them and push them out of this laboratory, because like, hey, like Eve is not meant to go on and see you two. So uh the two of them go out there, and so here is where Preston is to see where Laura is at now. It's like, well, hey, like from all the stuff that we did in the first film, like you're willing to go on and be a part of this whole lab experiment and make more of these aliens. Like, you of all people, like, should be one to have tried to have gone on and tried to like avoid this ever happening again. But okay, like, I guess that's just a mistake on your part. So they have to also to Preston explain how this is not Syl here, that this is now Eve, and she's a clone, and this and that. And so Preston is saying how biblical that is, because the whole Adam and Eve thing. And then also they'll go on and they'll say the actual words Adam and Eve later on in this film. So Preston is to go on and ask, how is it that Eve is to be more controlled in this film, as her certain natures are to be repressed because she is to be more human. But then also, they end up stating that she has a toxic capsule within her brain, which I'm like, okay, but how is that going to work out? And really, it just ends up being that somebody just has to hit this button and then the toxin is to be released. But stupidly, they end up placing the whole button like right next to Eve's lockup, which Eve just breaks and then runs off. And so I'm like, man, that was stupid. But again, that is to just be like the obvious, like, well, like Eve has to go on and to continue to escape out of here. So Preston ends up telling Laura, it's like, you know what, like, who are you now? Like, I remember the original Laura had a lot more soul. I got soul! Super bad! So, here's where the colonel goes on and says, like, well, hey, like, you killed one of these things before, just do it again. Just do it good this time. Just do it really good. So here is where Preston goes on and like, well, yeah, here's where the fun begins. So they make their way onto the Garberville Psychiatric Institute, where here's where they go on and meet with Cromwell. So Cromwell has gone on and done some Mars meteorite research, and he is to have gone on and also done some things in Antarctica. So Cromwell is to go on and state how like Mars was like 100 million years ago, quite different than it is now. It's just a husk of a rock of a planet. So Cromwell wanted to turn to the government and tell them to reconsider ever going to Mars, but they did anyways. And so Cromwell ended up getting so mad that he found one of the highest military officers he could find and punched them out, which then ended up having him getting imprisoned within this psychiatric ward because of course he did. So we have Eve that is going on and painting her nails, and both Laura and the Colonel are having a talk between one another, and they end up talking about how the samples on the astronauts' ship had thawed, and that the astronauts had gone on and infected uh, or the slime had gone on to affect the astronauts, and like the Colonel is ending up referencing X-Files here. It's kind of fun. So uh what they're deciding to go on and do here is put together an interrogation of every single one of these astronauts to try to figure out who the alien uh guy is. So and Preston is to go on and state that it seems that a lot of the astronauts had this gap of time that they're not really aware of. And also Preston is to mention how like the certain people that they had gone on to be connected to is to lead them to like trying to figure this all out. So let's get into the next part here. So uh, here's where we go on and we have Preston who turns to the Colonel and is mentioning how like the fate of the human race could end up being effed to death. Um, could end up being effed into extinction. So like we really need to uh, start testing whoever the suspicions are now of these astronauts. So the Colonel is saying to test Patrick first. So Patrick, it seems, is going on instead of restraining himself from sexual natures. He is to go on and meet up with the woman that he was at the fundraiser with, and she is to want to go on and give him a blowy. And it seems that Patrick is wanting to go on and try to figure out ways to, like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should wait. Like, maybe this isn't right. Like, man, this is really going into some X rated territory here. So, as we have Preston and we have Laura make their way to finding where the astronauts were to supposedly be housed, but none of them are there. And so, like, well, like, we need to go and we need to find all of them. So, that then has us go to Anna, the other astronaut, the female one. And she is going on and having a moment with her, I'm assuming, husband. And she's in bed, and the two of them are gonna go on and go at it here. And so Preston and their group is like, well, hey, like, we gotta get to him. Like, so as they're driving off, trying to get to where these astronauts are, as well as also like Anna, who's going into the throes. So what ends up happening here is Anna ends up unleashing her uh her baby on to her husband, and the husband ends up getting this huge massive tether in his face, and he ends up getting quickly killed. And so then by the time Preston and Laura make their way to burst into this room, they then have to go on and take out Anna and use this spray weapon to kill her. So they're immediately just thinking like, well, like our job isn't done, like let's wipe our hands off of this. Like no, like let's just send a full crew in here and make sure that we got everything, but we need to get to the others right away. So we then move on to Dennis, who is making his way to this yacht. And so this woman is to think that like, oh yeah, I'm getting some tonight. And Dennis is like, well, yeah, like you didn't think that I had just some tugboat, did you? So the two of them are making their way onto this boat, and they're getting close to the throes. And we have a bunch of men that throw down their weapons and is like, excuse me, sir, like I need you to come with me. And so Dennis is like, man, like, man, can a man get some booty? So Dennis is going on and saying like, well, hey, like I know the senator, like like me and him are buddy buddy. So like, if anything, I want your badges. I want your. So Dennis makes his way to this laboratory to get tested, and so they're starting to question Dennis, the Colonel and Preston and whoever. So they end up asking Dennis about his gap of time, and Dennis can't remember any of it. So they also end up asking about the fundraiser the night before. So that is also to connect to Anna, because that is the last time that Dennis was to have seen Anna. So Dennis is like, what is this line of questioning for? And it is all to lead to have the assumption that Dennis was to have been the one to have killed Anna, because Preston is to tell Dennis is like, well, hey, Anna is dead. And so Dennis is looking at them and like, so you're saying that I killed Anna? And they're like, no, like we know that she was an alien. We're just trying to figure out that you're one also. So the further and further they wait for this test results of Dennis's blood being taken, the doctor ends up rushing into to frame here. It's like, well, no, he's fine. Like he's not an alien. Come to find out, Dennis, because he didn't get the alien within him, was simply because he is to go on and have this seemingly dormant thing about him that they take it upon themselves to realize, like, well, hey, we can use this against the aliens and have this guy's blood be used as a weapon to go against these aliens. So Laura also ends up going on and relaying the fact that the blood that had killed the scientist from prior wasn't Anna, so it has to have been connected to either Dennis or Patrick here. So they have to go on and figure this all out. And of course, with Dennis getting resolved, then like it ultimately has to lead to Patrick. So there is to be some scientists who are to start to dissect Anna's body, and there ends up being one last alien attack-ish like thing that ends up kind of emerging through Anna's face. And that ends up getting, I guess, a good jump scare, but that didn't really affect me as much as probably the original film had some probably better jump scares. So Patrick wakes up the following day to find the blonde next to him dead and a baby next to his bed. So Patrick, now realizing the mistake he has gone on to make now by killing women and having these alien babies in front of him, Patrick is to go on and realize that there is no way out of this because he can't go to his father for results, so he's going to make his own by taking a shotgun to his own head. So the Colonel and Preston ended up going on and asking Dennis, is like, well, hey, like, do you know where Patrick can go on and be? Like, would you go on and tell us when you were to go on and see Patrick? And Dennis is like, oh, yeah, sure. And then Dennis goes on and quickly figures out where Patrick is, but then doesn't go and give the Colonel and Preston a little bit of a jingle. He is to go on and get freaked out and then run away and then run to Preston and the Colonel and kind of let them know what had happened. Because Dennis ends up seeing Patrick shoot himself in the head, and then all of a sudden it is to reform. And so Patrick makes his way back to the sink, cleans himself off, and then makes his way into finding some ladies of the night off the side of the road. So Dennis now is turning to Preston and the Colonel, and Laura's like, well, yeah, man, like, I was scared. Like, I was freaked out by what had happened to Patrick. And so they have to go on and they have to let Dennis know that it seems that people knew that there was some kind of problem with Mars, but they sent these guys anyways. They ignored what Cromwell had told them. And so, and also that the soil sample that they took off Mars, like, that somehow had to have been hostile. So we have the Colonel that's going on and asking, it's like, okay, well, what do we do now? Like, where do we proceed? And so Preston goes on and has the Colonel rest at ease, because it's like, well, hey, like, I'm sending out a group of guys right now to try and track him down. And so, like, Laura's saying, it's like, well, hey, like, if Patrick is going on and banging all these women and we're finding all these dead bodies lying around, like, we have only 2 weeks before the babies end up getting into the cocoons and then turning into adults. So, like, we have to realize that there is a certain timetable now. So Patrick makes his way to this batch of land that seemingly is to house a number of women that are willing to exchange certain acts for money. And so Patrick ends up paying off this man to then come and go as the guy in the wheelchair is to go on and make that goofy joke. So Patrick ends up going into room number 3, and as soon as he is to go on and go into this room, he actually physically looks at the cameras like, oh yeah, like, guess what I'm doing, and then walks off here. So Eva's going on and feeling every bit of what Patrick is going through, and they're trying to figure out why, like, her heart rate is going so berserk here. So Dennis and Preston make their way to the place where Patrick had come and go to, and they find this bed with a huge blood spread on it. And so Dennis is looking at Preston as he is to touch this like just blood-soaked bed sheet. It's like, how are you just doing that? Preston's like, man, I've been through a lot of this now. Like nothing's gonna shake me. So Preston Preston, I'm sorry here. Patrick. I'm sure I'm getting the names easily confused. My bad. Patrick makes his way to the strip club, which then lends him to give this woman a lot of money to then have her be dug up in a thing of forest somewhere, and he is to just find yet another kid and add him to the collection of others. So they're starting to realize, like, well, hey, like the Colonel, Preston, and Laura are starting to realize, like, man, it's been 2 days already. Like, we're not making a lick of progress here. So Laura ends up having both Patrick and Preston realize that there could be a possibility that Eve is to have a psychic link connection with Patrick here, and there's a possibility that they can use that to help find Patrick. But the only problem is that the connection could just go on and be dormant within Eve. So the Colonel is like, well, hey, well, like, let's make it undormant. Like, let's go on and use this whole connection thing. So Laura is to be like, well, I don't think I want to go on and do that because we have to kind of irradiate Eve, and it could be dangerous. And then also, like, Eve is to go on and become half alien. Like, doing this whole process will make her full alien. Will go full tilt alien on her, and she'll become strong. She'll become more aggressive. She'll go on and be definitely um, wanting to mate as more so than she had ever gone on and done before. So the Colonel is like, well, make it snappy, make it happen, like whatever you gotta do. So Laura ends up explaining this to Eve, and then Eve is like, okay, I'll do it. Like, I want to help. So, and Laura is explaining to Eve, like, how painful this is going to be, and Laura's like, I don't care. Let's do this anyways. So, Laura is to tell Eve that she's going to put her under this whole machine and only have it be for 45 seconds, but it seems like a lot longer than that. So, Eve goes and has this psychic connection and is now looking through Patrick's eyes, and he's going through this road, and so she starts spouting off these street signs, and Laura is now calling Preston and Dennis and telling where to head. So we have Preston that is making his way to this grocery store, and so like we have the relay of Eve to then have this go to Laura to explain this to Preston and Dennis, as they are to just kind of haul ASS to get to Patrick here. So Patrick is at this grocery store, and if he's already had this one woman eye him, like IF him, Patrick is to make his way to the cereal aisle where all these space flakes are, so that way he can definitely have these women kind of know who he is, so that way he can go on and find a mate here. So we have this woman that is to grab these space flakes and have Patrick autograph them. And Patrick tells this woman, like, well, you know what? Like, I think space flakes taste like butt, taste like dookie. But like, if anyways, my face is on them, so who cares? So we find that this woman's name is Darlene. So Preston and Dennis are running through this grocery store and like, where's the cereal aisle? Ah! Like, tell me where it is. And like, I thought that this was kind of funny. Preston and Dennis like running through this aisle. So Patrick grabs Darlene and is to just kind of hold her for hostage here, and is dragging her along the back parts of this store as Dennis and Preston are following suit here. So Patrick makes his way through this stairway, and again, Dennis and Preston are on foot. So Patrick goes on and is trying to find any car that could be available for him to try and sneak into, so he can get with Darlene. He can plow her. So Eve goes on and mentions how, like, well, hey, like, this guy is gonna try and plow her. He's gonna force himself on her. So the one van that Preston and Dennis end up finding, the only black van that it seems is having a rockin', as if to not come a knocking. Dennis and Preston open the van to find out that there is just some couple there, and they are just, I guess, not have such an easy ability to, like, get a room, you, you degenerates. So Eve finds out while she's connected to Patrick, and this makes a lot of sense because in any psychic connection, at some point, uh, Patrick is going to figure out what's going on here. So Patrick then turns as like Eve, and Eve is like Patrick, and then I'm like, two aliens. So Eve turns to show Patrick where she's being held because she wants him to come. She wants him to come. Anyways, so Patrick is to go on and tell this woman, Darlene, like, get out of here. So Patrick gets out of this van and lets Dennis and Preston capture him. And they're like, hey man, like, yeah, we gotta send you on some tests. Like, if anything, there's some bugged out stuff going on. And Patrick's like, well, okay, yeah, like, I'll go for testing. What's wrong? So he's easily kind of submitting here. He's like, yeah, just cuff me. Just come on. Just let's go. Because I want to go to this facility to meet up with Eve and hopefully get this door unlocked that Eve is inside of. So now that Eve is full alien, the scientists are turning to Laura and saying, like, well, yeah, like, it seems that, like, she's in heat right now. And also she's probably knowing that Patrick is going to come for her. So, yeah, like, she is just kind of building up here. So, Patrick is to make his way through this facility and sees the sublevels, and he's like, all right. So he bashes through the guards, and he starts to run to find Eve. And so the two of them are at this door now, and they're like just kind of pressing their hands against the door, and Eve is like wanting to just touch the door and just kind of feel some kind of something, like, even though like it's not meant to be right now. So Patrick's going on like, open the door, like, open this door. And Laura is telling Patrick, like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And so Laura's going on and telling Patrick, is like, no, like, we can help you. And so Patrick ends up taking Laura and having like an alien thing come out of Patrick's mouth to, I guess, go into assuming that, like, maybe they did something with Laura here, maybe they didn't do something with Laura. But all that is to be for naught, as Preston is to barge in with the alien weapon, and Patrick is to run off and smash into some guards and then run through this door to escape. So here's where the Colonel talks to Senator Ross and is to mention how Patrick is infected, and uh, the senator is like, well, I guess that we'll have to deal with this quietly. Or no, wait. I think the colonel is to say it's like, rest assured that this will be handled in a quiet nature. So, if they're going to get the best treatment, the best medical doctors, yada, yada, yada. So, Ross turns to Carter, and it's like, you know what? Cut the crap. Like, so, they're like, well, hey, like, we need to go on and find your son as soon as possible. And Ross is like, you're going to kill him, aren't you? And Ross is like, if you touch one hair on this kid's head, like, I'm going to go on and do everything that I can to stop you. I'm going to call the president. I'm going to, you will rule the day that you were ever born, and all these intimidating factors and what have you. So the colonel is like, well, hey, you're making this very difficult, and it's not necessary that it has to be. So Ross is also like, well, like, I cannot go on and allow you to take my son and probably kill him. So here's where the president's going to get involved. So Eve is now looking at Dennis as Dennis is to kind of put his hand against this glass, and Eve doesn't see Dennis as attractive, sadly enough. Sorry, Dennis. So Dennis then turns to Preston and Lauren like, well, yeah, like, I can't even get some loving from an alien. Like, because we really find out that Dennis's loving car is all dried up here. So the reason why Dennis is to be kind of not as enticing compared to Patrick is because Dennis, it seems, has a disease dormant within him in his genetic code. And after going on and realizing that, they're like, you know what, that's it. Like, we can go on and actually use Dennis's blood and use that as a weaponizing thing. And so, like, all right, like, so Patrick makes his way to his mother's cabin as Eve is just kind of looking on in the distance in this chair, sadly enough. So Senator Ross meets up with Patrick, and it's like, yeah, I knew that you would go here of all places, because this, of course, was your mother's place when I courted her. And when she died, like, I couldn't have gone on and, uh, like, not to have kept this. So this whole bit of dialogue here is to eventually go on and have Ross finally give in and say, it's like, you know what, like, Patrick, obviously you need some help, and I'm willing to help you. Like, we can go and have you, like, with the best doctors and the best help, and like, we can beat this. And Patrick turns to his father, tears in his eyes, and he's like, "Daddy, help me!" And he hugs him, and we're thinking like, "Oh, this is gonna get resolved." But no, the alien within Patrick is going to go on and thrust uh, through Senator Ross's chest and kill Senator Ross, to where then Patrick is just like, well, okay, like, let's just go about my business. So, uh, we have Laura that turns to Eve and says, like, well, hey, we need to go on and we need to, find Patrick again, so we need your help. And Eve is like, I'm sorry, but I can't do that, Laura. Sucks to be you. And so Patrick is starting to cocoon his children, and they're going on in and so Dennis and Eve and Laura are all getting into this cage to try and figure out what's weapons are best to use, as Preston just has this laser vision or laser eyed gun, and Dennis is getting this machete, and he's like, I'm going all African on this guy's ass. So, and as well as also Preston has this like just kind of like small gun, and it's like, isn't that not quite big enough? And Preston's like, well, like it's not all size that matters. And like here's where Preston ends up making the joke about like Dennis having like the 11-month drought, and because Preston ends up saying like, well, I'm a lover, not a fighter. It's like, yeah, sure, you're not much of a lover. So uh so Laura ends up going into the cage, and it's like, well, hopefully this weapon works. And here's where Eve breaks through this glass and is starting to bash through all these guards to then destroy the tethering device and rip through this door and then run through getting out of this facility. As the colonel is on this helicopter, it's like, well, hey, like, let's see what's going on here. So Laura ends up getting blasted with guns to then fall over, and we're assuming that she's dead here because there seems to be blood that is trickling from out of her body. But then all of a sudden we get the remix as Laura is to have fallen, and then she goes on and flips back up in a very stupid way, of which to just be like, well, obviously they had her fall to the ground, and then they just kind of and they kind of took the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers way out of this by just remixing her falling to the ground and then her getting back up. So Laura is now running as there is nothing to stop her. She makes it into this Humvee and drives off. And so Preston is turning to Laura as they are on the chase, and they make their way into the Humvee, and like, how is it that she knows how to drive? It's like, well, her favorite show is Dukes of Hazzard. It's like, okay. So Eve, having this psychic connection, can figure out where Patrick is, so that helps uh Preston and Laura figure out where also Patrick is as well. So Eve makes her way into the cabin to find all of these cocoons that are to seemingly be an existing thing. So Preston, Dennis, and Laura make their way also into this cabin to find uh, all these cocoons there, and like, all right, like, so Laura is to go on and say that like these cocoons are to uh not be all that bad, and like Preston is like, well, no, they are really that bad. Like, they're all aliens, just like Patrick is the guy that we are trying. So like Laura is trying to figure out some way to say, it's like, well, Eve isn't bad, and maybe these all these like cocoons aren't that bad, but it's like, no, like, they're bad, all of them are bad. Like, we have to shoot bang bang all these aliens. So Eve and Patrick meet, and here's where they throw their clothes to the side and they thrust into one another. So Laura and Dennis are wiping out with their weapons all these cocoons, and one of the cocoons ends up attacking Dennis as Laura saves him, and Dennis thanks Laura, and she's like, well, you're welcome. So Preston goes on to find Eve and and Patrick in their own cocoon. And Preston is telling Eve, "Get out of the way," as Eve is like, "Seriously? You're thinking that I'm gonna do exactly what you say? No." So Patrick, realizing that he has to force his way out of this cocoon to then face off against Preston, and because of how big and massive Patrick now is, he ends up kind of schlocking Laura, Dennis, and Preston here, and just kind of just throwing them off to the side. To where now Laura is hoping that, like, Eve, help us. So Eve does go on and do good here, and so she ends up within her back having all these spikes come out to thrust upon Patrick, and so now Patrick is to go on and fight against Eve, and then have two heads become one, or have one head become two, and Patrick at this point is just now overpowering Eve to the point of us assuming that Eve is going to be dead. But then also, Patrick is trying to go on and impregnate Eve, and that ends up having us thinking that Eve still dies within this movie, but there is to be some offspring that happens by the end of this film, which is to be how they end this movie. So Patrick and Dennis, they realize that they have to figure out a way to beat this monster. So with a dragon and the sword kind of thing, we have Dennis that is telling Preston to, like, hey, use my blood, man. So Preston takes this pitchfork and stabs into Dennis's leg, and I'm just like, man, like, this is some crazy that we're seeing here. Like, man, could you just go on and see that, like, Dennis, like, them needing to use his blood, how they could have gone on and just been like, yeah, like, let's consistently stab into this guy because we need more blood. Like, wouldn't that have been a funny thing to be how this plays out? So Preston throws the pitchfork, and so Laura is upset that now Eve is dead, and Laura ends up blasting away Preston here, or Patrick here. So I knew I was gonna get these freaking names confused. So probably that's why Preston's name is now Prez, so you wouldn't get him as confused. But I still got him confused anyways. So they go on and they do take out Patrick here, and they do kill him because the blood does go on and start to affect Patrick and start to kill him. Like, they think that it wasn't working at first, but then they realize, like, oh no, it's working. So it falls over and it dies. And so Eve is getting carted off, and uh and Preston is now smoking, and Laura's like, well, when do you smoke? And he's like, just now. And so she's like, well, hey, can I get a drag? So Laura and Preston, I don't think, get back together here, but they obviously should have. But if anything, Eva's getting carted off, Dennis is getting carted off, and Dennis is like, man, like, I finally want to get some booty. And coincidentally, the military girl that is looking after Dennis is a female, so it's like, all right, like, convenient story for the win. So, we have Laura and we have Preston that are looking on as Dennis is getting helicoptered away as they all thumbs up. So we also have to have the American flag just kind of wave off in the distance, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So Eve's ambulance, it seems, has a cat within it, and then also is to have one of the children of the corn, uh, dude alien, or kid alien that's a dude, kind of looking on at Eve as Eve is to give birth while still being dead to some offspring, and that's how they end the film. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here because I realized that this was an hour and a half thing, and I need to probably go on and do other things for this day. Because what I did was, is I was trying to get this movie reviewed the night before, but then I was like, you know what, I'm getting too freaking tired. And then like the longer and longer that I try to do uh like late at night reviews, the more that I'm just gonna be like, oh, I'm so tired. So this is why that this review is to be like done as quickly as it is to go on and be, because I knew that this could go on and hopefully do well for the channel. So thank you for going on and watching this, because I'm sure that you probably watched the whole thing right now. Like, I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure you went on and just kind of watched the early parts of this, or the first 20 seconds that it seems that is to be the average time that people are to go on and watch most of my videos. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm just not like good looking enough. I'm not good looking enough, or like logically, a lot of people are just assuming that's like, oh yeah, he's reacting to this, even though it obviously says it's review. Um, because a lot of people like don't know what a review is, or obviously don't know like what these things are, and so they're just seeing the movie title and that's all they see. But like, uh, but I get it. Like, people just kind of rush into something. They're seeing a very long video and they're just kind of assuming um, things of a certain nature. But then also, like, honestly, people should be thinking of the fact, like, for how much skin is honestly within this movie, like, why would anybody go on and want to put that on YouTube because they knew that they could get like banned or claimed or whatever? So logically, like, people should go on and just find a way to see this movie on a streaming thing, which I had gone on and provided. But I am sorry to go on and just mention that here. But like, I also just naturally assumed that people aren't going to go on and watch this long. But anything also, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for going on and watching this. I do appreciate it. I do. Uh, and also, here's to another review that I hope will do well, because I need it to. Because there's been so many times where I've looked at so many other things where I was just like, no, like all of this should go on and do really well, and then it doesn't. And I'm like, well, like, of course it doesn't. Um, so with that said, it was nice to get that change of pace. So I'm gonna get that out of here so I can put this video out, and then probably have to turn around and maybe put out another one. But then again, who knows? I'm just happy to keep doing this consistently and figure out ways to keep doing it consistently. So with that said, I'm gonna consistently get freaking out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.